course of many days. Now you just kind of go in there and talk. Doesn't really matter how many mistakes there are along the way. It's just you practicing publicly. Nobody's going to see it anyway. So even in the case that people will see it, people will understand, and they're not anyone that knows you directly or indirectly. So it's essentially up to you now to go in there and do it right. You have been pushing yourself really hard to avoid this. So let's go in there and just talk our way through it like we always do.
So the rule here is that once I start this script, I have to go, and all failures along the way will be included as well. So let's just go through it real quick before starting completely. Mm-hmm. All right, so we will be talking about a bunch of things. So first I'll talk about how this is the biggest decision and the best decision I've made in my life, but potentially also the hardest challenge. Most important. But also the best. Are we ready? It's not that hard. All right, let's think about it. Need to angle this slightly. Let's hope it doesn't fall. This is the center. This is me. That's the camera. Let's press start. So I'll be really surprised if anybody comes across this project here, at least the first 2-3 weeks, since the point here, for me at least, is to not show it to anyone, that I can practice a bit until I actually start a real marketing campaign. Which, by the title, if anyone actually sees this video, will be apparent that there's 60 days, and so for the first 12 to 20 days, they're going to be dedicated to me becoming a bit more comfortable in front of a camera. Maybe it doesn't seem like it, but I'm not super comfortable. I spent a long time not making this video. Yeah, so basically I'm not gonna share this anywhere, so that I can avoid my friends and family from seeing it, since it's some pretty rash decisions and I don't want to be, what's it called, seen publicly making risky decisions. But anyway, also the dedication to this actual problem has the project here, 60 days, Millionaire, Bankrupt, is me aligning some marketing related stunt to like a bigger worldwide global problem, where the project's purpose is not here the next 60 days to focus on becoming a millionaire, but rather it's a vehicle to push a greater message or hope to go in a better direction for the world. And I want to also emphasize that there's going to be very little. Every video is going to be a single cut so that I can focus on what actually really matters, which is of course doing the project. All right. So yeah, like this is a very simplified issue of every problem in the world. We're seeing like serious growth in extremist ideologies. We have some Gini coefficient that is on the rise, war, mental health here. Now, to me, the primary problem, and I should maybe eventually talk about what projects we're going to do in order to maybe attend to some of these. What is the project itself? But let me just explain the project first here. And of course, we'll go to the goals. What are the rules of the challenge? Because risking everything is of course avoidable. So I have to put some rules in place in order to ensure that I don't take corrective action, right? And that means that you're essentially, the phrase burning the boats, and this is that, making sure that there is no way out except forward, so that I can ensure I put my full attention to this. Well, the biggest problems with the project outline, filming routine. This is important because I absolutely hate filming. So it has to be set in stone and done every morning for the next 60 days. How I'm going to showcase what and my progress. The company situation, my own assets, and so on and so forth. So back to the problem. Loss of informational control, loss of narrative. To me here, this can be maybe a bit vague in the definition, but since we've gone from an informational society where all information is curated by skilled people and you can go to a source that you trust, now most of the informational landscape is controlled by one or another algorithm, which the purpose of those is not necessarily to promote a wide range of ideologies. And we actually, most of the time, don't know how the algorithms work. Now, this was, in fact, my first project, which put me in this situation, right? About algorithm. So yeah, this is a longer story, but yeah, it's essentially why my company is not doing so well, and it's just me here now. But I took it instead of I mean, there was a period of me being kind of saddened about the situation. But now I kind of reallocated my focus to saying, okay, how can we take a bad situation and utilize it to our advantage? And this is kind of that, right? So if you can tell, this is as much me explaining to myself what the plan and strategy here is. There's another long-term purpose, right? I ideally want to do all of these succeed in all of these three aspects throughout my life. But in order to attend mental health here, we can build a solution that is monetizable, which was the problem with number one, wasn't monetizable. I just kind of invested my own money in it. So a tool that is extreme but can enable users to achieve significant milestones in terms of self-development and productivity. So I've actually already built much of it, because this is how I've been operating in general, always looking for ways to optimize my own routine, my own productivity, and integrating AI in everything that I do. So the focus is, of course, on developing an AI solution, and for now I'm just calling it Strive AI. And essentially, if we just take the purpose of improving global mental health, well, the only things that I can control right now, and in order to achieve a major goal like this, we have X amount of time over the next couple of months that I can spend. And in order to achieve, the purpose of this project, Millionaire, whatever, we got to focus on the tasks that have the highest return on investment, right? Now we're time limited here, but essentially, since we're developing a solution that's focused on personal development, the alignment is very strong with long-term benefit to me as productivity-wise. If I can optimize everything and all aspects of the time that I spent here and remove anything that is unnecessary to the purpose of this project, which essentially I've delegated the next 60 days only to this, and will be more of what I'm already doing, working a lot, and essentially discovering the activities that creates the largest impact and automating them with AI, right? So an example of this could be having everything all the time transcribed and have an AI always create some commentary on what's going on in order to effectively improve the way you think about things, right? So each AI that's making comments on certain aspects of what you're doing should have different focuses. And so I have certain plans I can showcase at one point, but let's just move on. So building the life-changing AI tool, use this tool every day, so eventually maybe I will feel comfortable enough to share anything outside of this room here. For example, morning routines, evening routines, midday routines, work routines, how you can integrate this AI tool in everything. I'm already very far in this development process. So essentially, the first problem that we encounter here is become great and authentic on camera. And it's something I've been struggling with because I've been trying to do this for a long time, but all of my prior projects always fail because I don't want to appear publicly on camera. Also, why in the first place I might be not sharing my identity, because I don't want anyone else to know about this except random people on the internet. So yeah, go from authentic to sharing this journey and strategic decision making, right? So how can I share the financial details about everything? Well, it'll be up here somewhere. And the workday, any crashes I might have, what is happening here, right? How can we avoid crashes? What activities can we do to fix and make sure that every workday is spent as effectively as possible? And this is going to be very extreme because I'm already very intense in the way that I approach things, but now we're just going to go 120% in that direction. And of course, I think it would be interesting to, the format that I'm going to present here in a bit is going to be about, well, I'm going to present this decision-making process that I make on a daily basis, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. I'm going to present the decision-making process in terms of long-term decision-making, weekly goals, monthly goals. But I'm also going to present the emotional part of things. We'll see how it goes. Generally, I'm very stable, but it's all about the mindset behind how can one keep going when the numbers on my current situation is looking like they are currently. So now we move on to the rules here. This is a rule that is the most important one, and the audience is gonna experience most likely is if I make any mistakes during these single takes, I don't have a choice but to commit to that single take. So like everything right now, this is going to be a single take where I go through all my decision making in order to prevent these spiraling loops of thinking about how to word a phrase, a rephrase, a rethink a way that I'm communicating something. I've, for example, already made a lot of mistakes that my brain was like, we should correct that. Wanted to introduce some of the rules and the purpose and the risks earlier, for example. So financial transparency, how much money is in the bank? How many assets do we have? How many liabilities? I'm only feeling comfortable sharing this because it's gonna be anonymous, this whole journey. Eventually, as you will see later, the plan is to make it a public marketing tool, right? But until then, it's just an anonymous platform where I can share and improve on my skill as a presenter and develop the correct framework in order to make these videos as effectively as possible without any long delays. Always MSOPs is morning standard operational procedures, right? So I have a 1.5 hour morning routine, going for a run. Looks like this. And this also should probably be improved, but we'll also get to that eventually. Essentially, if you take all of these steps, there is several ways where I could look and say, okay, well, I'm not doing this here anymore, or this or that, so we should change that and improve it, right? How can we save 15 minutes here or something, right? Coffee maybe should be later on because of the low amount of adenosine at this point, right? I think it's only, anyway. If we go back to this, I will showcase how the frameworks are going to help later. Focus is on self-development, sharing that, and 60 days of commitment to always working and always releasing these videos. and no loans. So I'm already running at a massive loss. So this is why we are at the 60-day mark currently. And there's some things that could be said about this, but let's move on. The biggest problems in this project so far is the recording, me actually committing to recording something every day. This is the biggest problem probably I've ever had in my life, because there are so many ingrained aspects of my personality that just wants to avoid this under in any kind of way. What could I more say about that? This is why the only way I could get myself to commit to this is by not telling anyone about it. And then hopefully during the next couple of weeks I'll improve and feel more comfortable doing this, to the extent that I can release this to some people that I know. Until then, it's gonna be this secret project where I just disappear into my office and no one knows why for the next 60 days. The next biggest problem is, of course, time. Optimizing the time. How do we spend it effectively? This is something that, you know, anybody struggles with, and especially if you have a bit of lack of focus or ADHD or something like that, I will tend to spread my focus thin over many different priorities and managing not to achieve any of them. Yeah. So, but essentially right now my frameworks are working very well in solving this, and that's why we've gotten to the point where I can actually record. Next problem is money. It's the artificial timeline is not artificial, it's a realistic time frame. And since I've calculated for monthly expenses, so actually we will run out of money 10 days before the end of the project, and unable to run the expenses or pay for anything, both privately and company-wise. So this is why it's exciting. That is why this will make me push myself more than anything else. And I've been running up against this problem for some time and really downscaled my company, and now it's just me and a part-time employee, which I will have to also commit to or make decisions about, right? And that's where this decision-making process about keeping or firing an employee is maybe interesting to share with others, because it's an emotional decision as much as it's a financial decision, and overcoming the pragmatic aspect is hard when there's such a strong emotional investment. This one's implementation of scalable architecture. I mean, it's pretty generic. And this has nothing to do with it, right? But if we just look at certain aspects of how the code works, well, getting all of that code to work in a coherent way together is very difficult when you're one guy with a massive code base that was maintained by 20 people. Now it's just you. So basically it's just the strategic development decisions that has to be made about the project. Because one thing I haven't talked about, I essentially put it in the assets, but I don't have any liquidity, but I do have 2 grants from Microsoft and Google for 200,000, 250,000, and 150,000. So even if I release the product, I won't have to worry too much about expenses for some time. Here's the outline. The focus the first 3 weeks, a strong focus on development. The funny thing is that product development, it is very strongly related to self-development in this case, where we're building a product which primary focus is to essentially monitor me and make sure that I make the right decisions on a maybe minute by minute basis. I have much of this in place already. So the biggest, well, I can show the front end. Can't find there's one really interesting one. Okay, whatever. This is kind of how the front end works. You have different modules you can append to your dashboard, and based on what data you feed the system, you will essentially track different aspects. For example, your motivation. The AI will take pictures of you and then update your motivation meter and make sure that you can autocorrect if there is certain fallouts. I think I actually have one that's called tracking. Yeah, here. Where essentially, if we can track, motivation, mindset, directable focus, and energy, but also connect that to the receptors that are responsible for organizing that kind of negative or positive outcome, right? Dopamine related to motivation, GABA related to maybe exhaustion and also motivation, and mindset because of more risk taking. Acetylcholine related to potentially some intelligence related aspects, and glutamate also, maybe energy and motivation. Prefrontal cortex, so thinking about all of these things in the sense of how do we implement them. Currently it just tracks motivation and these things, but it's not controlled based on predictable brain functionality. Now this is interesting if you want to essentially optimize your brain chemistry, which we are also going to focus on and already doing. So yeah, moving on, self-development, creating like the ultimate self-development product throughout the course. We already have a really good head start, but it's still going to be very, 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 very tight. Marketing is indirectly handled through this, but obviously I will have to step up my marketing game. I think I have underneath all of this, I can showcase how there is a stronger outline than this. Sales process, direct sales, trying that, direct email outreach to, for example, potential partnerships, giving this to gyms and motivational coaches to establish some kind of partnership where they can sell it to their clients and have a form of shared profit. But if this is going to be a millionaire project within 60 days, we have to include investors in this. You can calculate, right now we're in minus quite a lot because we'll get to that. But essentially how many pre-sign-ups, customer retention, it's a bit hard, but if we get some seed funding, some soft funding, or similar, we can potentially evaluate the company at $1 million or more by the end of 60 days. It all comes down to all of the bottlenecks that I've already described so far, right? And this will involve pitching, and honestly, sales and investing and talking with investors directly, it's not a problem. For me, I have no problem talking to people in person or being on stage or something like that. My biggest problem is with the recording of videos for some weird reason, and also exposing myself and committing myself to like a mission that's greater than, just I'm gonna make some money. So this is the filming routine. Basically 1 to 2 hours of prepping. This is not just for the filming. It's me planning out my day in detail and creating these nice graphs that can showcase what went well, what went bad or poorly. Then I can show how yesterday's outcome was successful or not. I can show how my morning routine or any kind of other frameworks that we're implementing in terms of self-development went. And then I can suggest changes and present issues and new strategies in order to, for example, solve a crash or solve a particular function that's not working as intended, or bootstrapping a goal so that we can move on to a larger dependency in order to reach this pretty ambitious project. Creating new goals and then committing to them and saying this is the thing. And then there's also a weekly goal setting session, which is focused on essentially the exact week that is, I have it somewhere. And then there's the editing. I haven't really thought how to do it as effectively as possible yet, but essentially, potentially it could be done with AI, but I will have to calculate if it's worth it to create a framework that automates it versus just doing it myself. Essentially, everything is going to be drawn in these kind of like graph chart style frameworks so that we can take a problem. I think I made an even better one. Where's the better one? Right. Discover something that's wrong or not working as intended and figure out if improving and solving that problem is going to be worth the time in order to fix it. Say, I can't wake up early enough. Will it be worth it for me to set up lights that turn on automatically in the morning in order to wake me up prior to my alarm? Write the description of how that blueprint is going to be implemented. So an example of that could be a framework like this. Now you have version 1, let's call it that, though this is probably version a lot. And provide a new solution saying, here is a problem. Well, this section here, actually this is an actual problem. Burnout. Leading to less productivity throughout the day. Solution would here be probably either figure out if there's some brain chemistry that's going wrong, burning ATP, creating a high cortisol, And so if we attend the issue of cortisol, maybe we will be able to continue with this, or we could make the intensity less, right? Or do different exercises. So that's taking everything and breaking it into small, reasonably sized frameworks that can be iterated upon, right? And then that's it. Basically, you can do that with anything in life. I love to do it with code, but now I'm applying it to self-development, right? So what do we have to play around with here? Almost nothing. So privately, it's actually more like 0 now that I paid for my rent. And that leaves us $2,000 in the bank. We have a warehouse in Ukraine, randomly, which has about $50,000 in product assets. There's a good reason for that. I've had it for many years, but it's probably worthless, maybe a couple of $1,000, but actually converting that to any form of value is going to take so much time and energy. I think it's not worth it. And we could potentially activate it in a different way. That is more effective in terms of the project. Then I have 30 servers. They're also valuable, but they are customized and custom water cooled and related to the prior project. I think they're really hot. Again, probably can't be sold despite the high focus currently on graphics cards for large language models. We have a code base with a lot of existing code. We have about 20 Macs, PCs, and screens. We have 270,000, I don't remember if it's 30 or 70,000 from Google grant, and then we have 110,000 from Microsoft left. This also includes here, this is important, quota to A100s, 80 gigabytes times 4. So that's good. Then we have some missing payments from prior clients. I think it's about $2,000. Then I have a board position which is going to pay out $1,000 if I contact them. So we'll do that throughout this week. So that leaves us effectively $5,000 for the next 2 months. Liabilities. This is where you start to see a problematic situation with the taxes being a lot higher than our current liquid assets. Essentially, you know, on paper it looks fine until you consider that the company also owes me, I think it's 140,000, but let's just write $120,000. So the last yearly report was not ideal. And so that also means that, at least on paper, the company is evaluated very, very poorly. But essentially I can take this and say I don't want this money. It's now, I convert it to shares in the company, but this is tax-free money that I can pay myself. So I would rather not do that. Unpaid invoices, there's some missing invoices, so now we're down to 3,600. Google accounts, subscriptions, office, power, food. That's private, right? Part-time employee, right? So you can see how it's going to be tough getting all of those things to match our current budget, which is why we only have 60 days. Potentially we can collect some money through other means. There is actually another source of funds, but that is the timeline for that project, which was finished a long time ago, and the actual payout is also only like $2,000 or $3,000. It was kind of like the brainstorming over the next 60 days, how we move from some development, back end, front end, marketing, partnerships, influences, sales. Well, how can we also make some creative videos that will potentially lead to high quality content that could be viral one way or another, right? Posting on forums, all of these things. This is essentially where we have to discover what aspect of these, which one of these should be highly focused on versus everything else. As today, this is how everything is going to be kind of like showcased. This is my current way of tracking until I have implemented the attention AI system, which is finished. I really want to do it maybe tomorrow. But yeah, this is done, this is done, this is done, this is done, or doing, right? And so all of these is essentially building some more frameworks that can be implemented into my routine in order to support the project overall, to ensure that I succeed. And so I have a meeting soon. Where's that? That's that one. Which will mean that maybe the person will show up in 5 seconds. This is the actual framework. What I'm thinking sleep-wise, morning routine, planning, filming, editing, posting, working, lunch routine is something I haven't defined yet, but it's essentially, rather than focusing on eating, related to introspection, right? How do you make sure that you avoid running into a wall when you run out of, could potentially be ATP. And so I think having frequent check-ins and interviews with oneself is important in order to achieve that purpose. Then of course there's a lot of work, and as you can see there's a lot of focus on planning. I think this will go down as I get better at it. The morning routine, I kind of want to shave off 30 minutes, but it's really hard to fit in all of the things. It's more a matter of waking up and executing more efficiently. Daily SOPs. Interesting that I put it there. Construction. So this is an interesting aspect of the project. I will be focusing on building physical items that will support an optimal framework surrounding everything that I do. And so it's also a part of the winding down routine, since it doesn't involve any screens. And then there's the evening routine, listening to some podcasts, making sure that there is no sunlight. This is the current weekly goals that I plan. Let me see here. Right, there's the challenge. So without spending way too much time going through all of this, essentially how many hours should each task be allocated, and how many hours do we have in the week, right? Currently, if we look at this, I'm allocating most of my time to work, and some of the tasks on this one, planning, is also there. So we have maybe, I think I wrote it here, 75 hours left this week of work. And then on Sunday, I have to include weekly framework. Right. And so if all of those things work out, this will all be ticked off, which is very unlikely since I'm 1 day delayed. I should have started yesterday, but it is what it is. We're starting here, shaving off 12 hours. We have to work more efficiently. And the biggest problem I'm seeing when I'm looking at all of this is very little is related to coding, and much of it is allocated to routines and frameworks, and also local optimizations, which it's nice, but I think potentially I'm only getting 5% improvement here, and maybe 15% long-term improvement here. But those decisions were made in order to, here, this is allocated to winding down routine, right? And this is actually long-term beneficial. So the problem here is that I think attention AI is like a 30% improvement, and it's only 6 hours. But I really want to have a solid foundation first before I start working on the back end and implementing the back end in the front end. And also the front end is really nice to visually have as a guide for these kind of talks. Yeah. Live AI that talks. Been wanting to implement Casper for a long time. So that's basically it. You can take this. And so we're here, right? And I think it's interesting eventually. Now, obviously, this is not high quality content for YouTube and stuff like that. It's way too long, way too little action taking place. People have low attention spans. But we're starting to go through the process of building me into the person required. And hopefully, I really want to get to the point where I can vocalize into any range that I usually do. But there's always this little slight hesitancy that prevents me from acting like naturally, authentically. But that's why this is probably the most important aspect of this project, getting through this video recordings and making sure that I commit to doing that, and that this is the highest priority. Changing my mindset surrounding that. And I have a big brain chart over my mindset because it's so on many aspects it's a great mindset, but just on this one it really sucks. And it's been like that my whole life when it comes to posting stuff on social media and recording myself. So I think this is the most important self-development focus I can have, and eventually I will probably also feel comfortable enough sharing, like, I think I'm already comfortable talking about like the mindset, why it is and where it's coming from and what I'm doing to fix it. But I also have to chunk these things so that I don't spend hours and hours every day talking about my decision making, right? But this is also introducing the whole project and not at all introducing the actual product. But as I say, it's a work in progress. We'll get to the actual product videos eventually. I have some pretty neat what's it called? Pretty neat marketing videos in mind. Oh, it's gonna be hard to watch that last second there. But since I doubt anyone is gonna see it, I'm fine with posting it, so that's the point. We'll chat later.